So it looks like they're being pushed from the top, which like I had wind machines all around, so that as they got higher, the wind would come from the right direction. And that was fantastic.
Really the big thing about Twister that people might not realize, the way it was photographed was really much more dynamic and sort of quite freer than visual effects before were really done. We really didn't do any blue screen for the movie at all. So all the things where we had to put the tornadoes behind the running people, it kind of comes down to digital paint work where you kind of rotoscope. It's very hard work, but I think it was absolutely necessary to make this film seem real, that you really were there.
The most difficult thing in those days is what people don't remember, is that originally when you make a movie with visual effects in those days, you put the camera on a tripod, you lock it off, and you make very little pans. Well, there's one thing we're going to have to change. This camera will never be on a tripod because, you know, you cannot get a sense of danger and action and incredible quick changes if I cannot put this camera on my shoulder. We made a lot of tests while we were shooting and see if we could do it. One other thing that I really enjoyed later on in post was actually when we had to come down to what those twisters are going to look like, is helping to design the look of the twisters.
Now the thing we did certainly for research was to gather all the footage we could. The biggest problem was that, of course, it's very difficult to find any film footage because they are so unpredictable. Jan watched a lot of that obviously as well too, to really duplicate that experience of how chaotic it is and all the different elements in it. And so our approach was to sort of look at that and then say, okay, now how would that look on film?
How does it fit in the landscape? And where does it connect? Because if you don't have it connect, if you don't see this interaction between where it hits the ground and the ground itself,
you okay?
then it's not going to work. Then it becomes
all right,
like
good.
An object that's just put in there. And that was difficult.
They had sort of a storm unit that actually started filming, I think, the month before and drove down all the panhandle there from Oklahoma to Texas and to just get some footage of huge storm fronts. And we were able to use some of those. Where other sequences, for instance, Hailstorm Hill, where they're driving up the hill and then the hail starts happening, they try to get the Dorothy off the truck. That whole swirling sky and all that was all computer generated because there was literally nothing up there but blue sky or gray sky. And so sometimes we had to create it all and sometimes we were able to use something that was there as a sort of a starter kit.
We do not have a visual. Help us out here.
We did have a lot of reference and there were a lot of different looks. They always do look different. It always depends also what they're going through, what kind of color earth they're picking up, and you know how much water content is there, and how much over speed they travel, the wind speed inside of them. So you try to use all of those, and then it's really, you know, working with somebody like Jan also to articulate that. That one in the end was probably like a wall of elephants coming through.
Run!
Well, some of the other ones were much more elegant in a way. I thought the water and funnels were sort of like, you know, you could sort of say like water fairies dancing out there in their own little mysterious dance. Now animating them really is actually a fairly simple task in terms of their movement because you're just really animating a little string around which you build the tornado. So that piece of animation was easy, but then creating the tornado around it was the hard thing. Instead of having a solid surface, you're really using a completely different approach to represent mass. I mean, the mass of a tornado, which is literally billions and billions and billions of particles. None of this existed when we started, and Twister was certainly the technology created for a tremendous foray for industrial light and magic into using particle systems to that extent.
What I really want to make sure is that the threat was growing. You know, during the course of the movie, the audience understands what it really means on a tornado. And you start with a small one. So you're taught a little bit what a smaller can do. So you set up a little bit then what a bigger one could do. I really wanted to create characters because they are talking to the twister. They see it as a character themselves. It's something they bet on. And they take it personal.
You've never seen a man this house and miss that house and come after you.
So it was for me very important to create a character for every different twists there.
Hey, we got sisters. You read a lot of different accounts of what happens in tornadoes, and I think there was really one where a farmer had said that he had missed some of his cattle, and then it was found literally 20 miles away. So it was sort of reconstructed that the tornado had actually picked them up, but also put them back down in a relatively gentle fashion because they were still alive. And that's where the cow came from.
I remember doing the flying cow sequence, and Jan was trying to coordinate so that me and Helen and Jamie, our eye line is going the same way.
The basic is how do the actors relate to something they don't see? Because that's the one thing they could not see in the set. I could not on the set create the actual twisted. So basically, I kind of had to act it out, you know. And I was running around where the twister was, and there's bullhorns, and so that the actors had something to react to.
Bill, no, you're not watching here. The cow is flying. Here it comes. Follow the hand. Follow the fingers. It comes around. Now it's coming around again. Hang your line. Here comes the cow flying by again. It's so funny because that is such a popular moment in the movie, especially with young kids and stuff. They love the flying cow. I told Jan my version would be, in the Gothic version, the cow would fly by once, and then you wouldn't see the cow again. Then about 15 seconds, it would just rain hamburger meat down on the car as the barometric pressure just exploded the cow.
As a visual effects person, you really never hear the sound.
It's moving fast! Coming towards you, Joe!
Since that is going on in parallel, most of the time you don't really know it. And so I was very happy to hear that later on, you know, that was such a successful combination. Although I was certain that would happen.
I think it's really important that the antagonist has personality, and basically we have 6 of those. So, and that personality had to change. So I really felt very strongly about creating different sound effects for each one. And we started recording lots of different sounds and made a gigantic library of sound effects. And we also started recording lions and all kinds of animal screams. Working towards big crashing cars into walls. And ultimately, all these things mixed and slowed down and mixed together, we started creating different effects. I wanted the tornado to jump there. I wanted to get a sense that it's a living thing. But it was a really great effect because really the steel was shaking. It's still really good. I think it's still one of the best sound effect movies in a long time. I think even if now it still holds up. Very, very well sound effect.
One of the great themes is man versus nature, and will always hold our fascination. There's a fear, there's also a sense of wonderment. The forces of nature are humbling to behold and terrifying. There's a fear of tornadoes like there is of sharks. It's a primordial thing. It's almost in our genetic code. People are fascinated. It's kind of like one of those things where you're afraid, but you're almost so compelled by the awesome nature of seeing a tornado that you might become almost mesmerized by it to the point where you forget you're in mortal danger.
Such a great casting crew. It's the best members of the making of the movie. They all were such a team. Because everybody had the same struggle. Nobody had anything more than the other person. They all were the same. You know, it's like we spread over like God knows 30 little hotels, and we still have dinner together. It was the best time, and crew wise and cast wise, one of the best movies I worked on.